Good evening. Over the last 12 months, you probably, like me, came to realize more of the authentic United States history. American history is one of determination. However, our perspectives may vary depending on the lens we choose to use. If you are one of the members of the 600 Native American tribes that were here over 14,000 years before the Europeans landed, your view of the United States probably is different than the descendants of the Europeans who stepped on this land in 1492, or the descendants of the Africans who were brought here in 1619. I'm sure that the perspectives of Native Americans, the Europeans, and the Africans are different on how they view the making of the United States of America. Imagine, when writing the history of our great country, which narrative should be used? What story has been used? Since the African Americans' contribution to the making of the United States was overlooked and missing from the United States of America's history and textbooks, this injustice screamed out to Dr. Carter G. Woodson. It was on February 7, 1926, Dr. Woodson established the Negro History Week. Dr. Woodson was the second African American to receive a PhD from Harvard in 1912. Dr. Woodson wanted the Negro History Week to celebrate the entire year of contributions of the African Americans in the United States and in the world during that week. Back then, and like today, we continue to want to advocate for the true history and for an inclusive curriculum. It has been 94 years and 2 days to this date that Dr. Woodson created the Negro History Week, which is now has evolved into the Black History Month. We here at Mass Bay are excited to start our celebration this year by highlighting how Blacks and African Americans are still contributing to our country. And our Black History Month theme for this year is Moving in Excellence. At this time, we have our president, Dr. David Pradell, who will be our moderator for today's panel. David?
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We have a really great program today, and we're really honored to welcome Najo, Tita Reed, and Warren Reed, from whom I think you're going to learn a lot. I'm going to ask a few questions, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. But let me start with some introductions. Najo Tita Reed is the Global Marketing Reinvention Leader at Logitech. She's responsible for reimagining, redefining, and reinventing the global marketing function, reporting to the CEO. She's recognized for her ability to drive marketing and transformation. She began her career at the age of 17 as a summer intern at Procter & Gamble. Continually rising over 19 years, she transitioned from sales to marketing, serving as brand manager to several billion-dollar brands, including Global Pampers. She was promoted to the leader of multicultural scale marketing, responsible for African American and Hispanic scale marketing and strategy across $15 billion brands. One of her initiatives, the My Black is Beautiful campaign, was honored by the American Advertising Federation as the 2008 Mosaic Multicultural Ad Campaign of the Year. The Advertising Women of New York called it the Game-Changing Campaign of the Year. Advertising Age called it a groundbreaking campaign. Najo earned an MBA from the Fuqua School of Business at Duke University and a BA in English from Spelman College. She also completed several leadership programs along the way. Warren Isaac Reed is a social entrepreneur and educator. He's the founder and CEO of Nemnet Minority Recruitment, Inc., a national diversity recruitment and consulting firm that serves over 350 public and private K through 12 schools in recruitment and retention of teachers and administrators of color. Warren is a trusted consultant and advisor to some of the most prestigious secondary educational institutions in the country. He is known for leading transformational change and providing research-based strategy to assist institutions in improving their diversity recruitment and retention efforts. He's advised Harvard College, the NAACP, and Staples, among many others. He himself is a former educator who, at the age of 20, began his career as a DeWitt Wallace Fellow teaching history and serving as a coach, advisor, and director of multicultural affairs. Born and raised in Brooklyn, go Brooklyn, he is a graduate of Middlebury College, the Columbia University Institute of Urban Education, and the Harvard Graduate School of Education. He says he's a dedicated mentor and a terrible golfer. Please welcome Najo Tita Reed and Warren Isaac Reed.
Hey guys, hello.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Thank you so much for being with us today. And what time is it where you are?
It is 10:45 p.m.
Okay. Thanks for staying up late with us.
Absolutely.
It's a pleasure. Can you hear us okay?
We can. We hear you just fine.
Okay.
Like you were in the next room.
Thanks for having us.
It's our honor. Perhaps we could start. Could you tell us a little bit more about the kind of work you do and what draws you to it? Why does it appeal to you?
I'll go first. I am in marketing, as you mentioned, and first I want to thank Charles or Wawa, Mr. Moore or Dr. Moore, and you, of course, Dr. Buttle, for having and hosting this event. But I'm in marketing, and the type of work that I do is Logitech is a company that sells many different products. Just for context, something very relevant right now, which we help people work from home, connect from home, play from home. So I have a whole gaming suite of products, which is around gaming. So mice, keyboards, headsets, all of that for Logitech G and Astro for those gamers out there. We've got a streamers and creators business, people who are doing streaming and creating and are musicians and blue microphones and things like that. And we also have another business, which is work from home solutions, which is like the video cameras some of you might have, or the cameras you might see at school or in offices, and mice and keyboards and stuff like that. So all the stuff that most of us are using right now to connect. And so that's my business. What attracts me to marketing is the ability to connect a need for consumers with the solution. I think that's really what helps me. I really enjoy also being a diverse marketing leader to make sure that I'm giving a voice to the voiceless and serving underserved consumers as well. So that's also interests me. And I have, while he mentioned marketing reinvention, I'm always thinking of new ways to do marketing. I also own the commercial business, which means that I own marketing for all the countries for Logitech in the world. There's 120 countries and over $3 billion in sales. And so I like the business aspect and being able to connect to a global spectrum of people, which I find very fun. No day's ever boring when you've got that many countries. So that's what I do. And that's what I think intrigues me, is staying connected and meeting needs. So that's a little bit about what I do. Yeah.
Sure. So I run a national resource organization that attempts to assist public and private schools K through 12 with the recruitment of diverse faculty and staff. And what intrigues me most about this is the opportunity to provide access and exposure to employment opportunities. I'm a former educator and was perplexed with the idea that we couldn't find diverse talent out there. And so I've spent the last 25 years as an entrepreneur, but more so as a trusted consultant and an advisor to schools looking to diversify their staff.
So to give our audience a little more insight into things along the way that got you to where you are, could you talk about a major decision you made sometime in your career that really changed the path you followed?
Sure. Wow. So I think apart from marrying my wife and having 2 children, and being open to living and working abroad, I think the biggest decision that I probably made was listening to myself, right? I think the context is I'm one of 4 children. raised by a single mom who never made more than $50,000 a year. I had an opportunity to go to college on a baseball scholarship, and after the first year decided that I would forego that and transfer and end up paying college by myself. But in doing that, fast forward 7 years later, graduating from Harvard and then teaching, I decided to launch this business. But I was working at Yale University. And I remember distinctly in the month of November, the second week, I think I slept about 19 hours that week. And really the truth was that I was not being true to myself. I was not centered. I was doing what other people had expected of me instead of doing what it is that I wanted to do. And so the second week of November, I decided to walk into the career development office at Yale University and inform them that I would be resigning. And from that day forward, I decided to launch my business, and I have not looked back. So I think the most important decision that I've made thus far is deciding to listen to myself and to pursue my own path, even if it was the path less traveled.
You had some good mentorship during that time in your life too.
Well, there's absolutely. I don't think it was any coincidence that I met Dr. Deacon Moore, who over the years has been a source of support and guidance, and every now and then a kick in the butt. But I think out of all that's happened, it's trying to be true to yourself and to listen to what it is that is calling you. And that was when I decided to walk away from the trappings and trimmings of higher education and pursue my own passion.
That's great.
Oh, thanks.
Yes, I was listening so much, I almost forgot the question. But it's just, for me, I guess the decisions, of course, are around family, right? So those decisions to have a partner in this life, which makes it, I think, very rich, and to accept the offer to marry Warren, it's a very important decision that you make, and I'd say the partner that you choose is probably one of the most important decisions that you make. And so I don't want to underestimate that, whether he chose me, I chose, or we chose each other, it doesn't matter, but it's an important choice, and one should never take that lightly. I think the other important decision outside of family and listening to myself and choosing to have children, as opposed to following what might have been a more traditional route of viewing children as impeding your career success, and saying that you have to choose when you feel it's right to have children. If you listen to all that other nonsense, you'll made it very well in your career, but if you wanted them, you wouldn't have them. So listening. But career-wise, the most important decision I probably made when I was in college and chose to get an internship. I asked the professors where was the very best place that someone could intern to do business, which was a very broad question, of course. But a professor had recommending Procter & Gamble because they had one of the best training programs at the time. And many people who had worked for Procter & Gamble had been the CEOs of most of the major companies around the world. And so it didn't mean I was going to get that internship, but I was very focused on at least working for a place that was good training. Didn't mean I was going to be CEO of the company, of course, but that it was a good investment. And so I worked really hard to find a way to get an internship at Procter & Gamble. And I think that set me up very well for the rest of my life, not because I had just P&G on my resume, but they taught me fundamental skills for the function that I wanted to be in. And it happened to also be skills that were relevant, and they also have to be respected. So I get a lot of credibility because of that on my resume, that yes, I feel like I earned, but also you just are also building on the equity of something else. So focusing really hard to get an internship to me was something that definitely changed the trajectory of my career.
So I heard you, Warren, talk about listening to yourself, and I heard Najo talk about listening to the person who suggested Procter & Gamble as a good internship place. So it seems like it's the common element is listening.
Yes.
But it's listening both inward and outward. So let me ask a completely different question. And the theme of this talk is life balance. So could you tell us something about how you both balance your professional life and your personal life, which I think everybody struggles with?
Exactly. I think
I'll let you go first.
well, I'm a bit controversial on this one, so you might want to go first on this one. Because
Well, I would start by saying that this is probably the one area that we wrestle with all the time. We have two teenagers. We have an entrepreneur in the home.
we've been married for 22 years.
And we have someone who works in corporate America and sometimes can easily log in 80 hours a week, right? But I think it goes back to your values and what you deem to be important. Each year, we, sort of like before you kick off the new year, we sit down and focus on 5 areas: family and friends, finances, fitness, and faith. Right? And so within those 5 areas, we begin to create goals and action plans, things that we want to accomplish in that year. And what I have found to be helpful for me is, if it's not on the calendar, it's not a priority, right? So for me, it's really important to carve out time for these things that I hold important. And in doing that, I then protect that time and I create the space to do the things and to honor the things that are important to me. So, but it is, I say all that to say is that it truly is something that we wrestle with all the time. Today, we have so much that's in front of us, so much that's competing for our time and our attention. I think you have to be really intentional about honoring the things that are important to you. So that's how I'll answer that question.
Okay. And I think that I'd give Warren just another bit of credit. I think he maintains work-life balance by also being very disciplined on who he shares his time with and has no problem saying no. So he can say yes to the things that he wants. So I think that he is a fantastic role model for that, even for myself. But I think he does that very well. And being an entrepreneur, I think you definitely have to, right? Because you'll never be able to do everything because everyone's counting on you. So I just wanted to give you a little bit more credit. Now, I, on the other hand, do not believe in work-life balance. That's why I went second. So I'm married to someone who's like the role model for it. I do not believe in it. I am never going to have work-life balance, right? Work-life balance to me means that I would work as much as I spent time with my husband, as time I spent time with my kids, and being a daughter and a sister and a coach and all the different roles in my life, a mentor. There's no balance in any of that, right? So I believe, especially when I started having kids, and I had, many of you that, have kids, I had a 1 and 2 year old at the same time, right? And I had an executive job, and I was thinking about how am I going to achieve work-life balance? And I felt like every day I was failing. It's something. If I was a great mother for those 2 kids, I was about to get fired from work. If I was great at work, I was about to lose my marriage. If I was, I felt like it was really hard to get work-life balance. And so I really set out to redefine what that was going to be for me. And it was around harmony. It was not around balance. I'm never going to work the same amount of hours as I play or do anything. But harmony was important. So I had to say, what is the harmony that I want in my life? Like, what's it look when we have a harmonious marriage, and when I have harmony with my kids, and when I'm feeling harmonious with my mind, body, and soul, and when I have harmony at work? And then how do I keep that harmony? And that's what I work to do. So some days when I'm working 18 hours and it's a really hard day and whatever, you don't have a lot of harmony that day. But then you say, okay, in my life, how am I going to balance that out? And what am I going to do, with the family to create that harmony, and vice versa. So I'm always looking at harmony, not on a day-to-day basis, but, on a week, on a month, on a life basis to make sure that happens. And I feel like much better for that. And we have conversations as a family on if there's harmony, not there's balance, because I fail all day, every day on that. So I think it's important to establish what that looks like for you. That's just my opinion. But if you can have it, more power to you. So yes.
You talked about something that you don't agree on just now. So can you tell me more about how do you negotiate things when your viewpoints differ?
Yeah. I would say for me, when thankfully we don't have a lot of drag out screaming type of fights. I don't think ever. And we've been together way longer than the 22 years we've been married. married. But I think when we have disagreements, and oh, by the way, we do. I mean, we're two totally different people. We see the world totally different, and we don't actually agree on much of the little things, but we agree on everything that's important.
Yes.
I say that we tend to focus on what's the overarching principle that we're trying to do. So with our kids, totally disciplines. There's so much different about how we raise our kids based on how we were raised, but we do agree on the adults we want them to become. We do agree on the values we want them to have. We do agree on the type of people that, we want them to be in this world. And so when he's arguing about whether they read enough, and I'm making sure that they have self-confidence and self-expression, and we're doing, those are like that's like noise in the system. The key is, are we aligned on that bigger picture? And we try to come back to that. And then, like they say, don't sweat the small stuff, becomes easier. So I find when we're disagreeing, we pause, because you can get all trapped up in your own world. And we don't try to be right, because that's a key to end a marriage right there. And we focus on what's the bigger thing that we're focused on. And it tends to squash everything else. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I would just add that, and by the way, this has taken 22 years to arrive at, right? So I think first and foremost is being prepared to listen and humble yourself, or at least humble myself.
I do too sometimes.
Very, very rarely does she do that. So I think part of it is understanding that we're on a journey together. The big picture is what's really important. Along the way, there will be opportunities to take risks and even make mistakes, and that's okay. And in fact, making mistakes allows us to learn and grow together. So we actually welcome, not confrontation, but difference. And we together fight for the truth. So, this is something that if you've known us long enough and you've had dinner with us, there are moments where we will just get right into a discussion or a debate. And it's not a fight, actually, it's a fight for the truth, right? And to make sure that we are aligned and we are on the same page. And sometimes that's messy. Sometimes you have to wrestle with it. And I think if you're on the outside and you don't understand us, you might be perceiving us to be arguing or fighting, when in fact, all we're doing is seeking to get to a common ground in the truth. So I would just end by saying, be prepared to listen, humble yourself, trust your partner, and be ready to learn from the mistakes, because few of us are perfect.
And if I just add one thing, just because I know this is a little bit of an advice type of call where I don't even normally just espouse it, but I do think this is advice that I give it to all my friends as well. Warren and I, we're in our 40s, and we, at the end of the day, we probably have half our friends that are divorced, right? We're statistically relevant. It would make sense, right? And when I think about those, and they're all still our friends, thankfully, but when they come back and they say, when you guys disagreed, we actually knew it, because we'll be like, you said what? I'm not going bad mad, so we're going to have it right then and there. If you can't take it, you probably shouldn't be our friend, right? So I'm not going to act like everything's perfect all the time, because it's not, right? So we'll just cover it, handle it, get on, kiss, have dinner, move on. But a lot of our friends who did not handle that and didn't go through conflict and didn't ever bring things to ending and held it in, they all ended up not together. And not that this is some marital advice, it's the same thing with friends or partners or whoever. So I do say it's really important to handle conflict and not sweep it under the table and avoid it. And if you're with somebody that you can't do that with, you probably shouldn't be with them. So I just say that as well. 2 cents.
Great advice. Great advice. So if you could give your younger self advice, yourself at 20 or 25, from what you know now, what would that advice be?
Please go first.
So, wow. Yeah. So I think I need to qualify this. Like, I really feel at peace and centered with myself. Like I'm happy, and I'm happy where I am and who I'm with. I think if that were not the case, it'd probably be a different set of advice that I would give my younger self. But having said that, I would say take your time and don't be in such a rush. I would say be mindful of what you call into existence, what you believe of yourself and others, because you have the power to convince yourself of anything. And I share this to say that, I remember 14, 15, making declarations about my life, and every single one of them have come true. And I say this to say that, man, I wish I would have dreamt a little bigger. You know what I mean? Because you have the power to call that into existence. And so I would have dreamed bigger dreams. Not that I've stopped dreaming, but that that I would have, take my time and dream as big as you are possibly able.
I think just 10 years ago, you're saying?
Sure.
Okay. It feels like yesterday, that's why. But I'd say, from a personal life standpoint, I feel very blessed on the decisions that we have made, right? Because 10 years ago we was still together. And so I don't know if I would change anything there per se, because I think the choices that we made got us here. But I do think professionally, I would, recognizing what I know now, realize how much power, I had way more power than I thought I did 10 years ago. And so I would say, like, girl, you got more power in you than you know. Like, you don't need that boss. Like, get to stepping. You can choose your boss. Don't think that they hold all the power and choose you. You can choose where you work. You don't need that job. You're smart enough. You can go somewhere else. I think it would just be able to understand that the power is really within you, and you can make these choices and be bold. You have to have some basic skills, knowledge, and education, of course, behind that. But don't ever feel like, you're so grateful to be where you are that you can't dream bigger and change. If you have a jerk of a boss, get to stepping. I mean, do your work, by the way. But you deserve better. And I would just remind myself to not stay as long as I did some places. And by the way, I did get to stepping, but I probably stayed a little bit too long in some places thinking about the pros and cons. I'm like, no, he's a jerk. He's just a jerk, and move on. I'm not going to change that person. I tried to change some situations that potentially were unchangeable. And when I had the courage to move, I always did better. And so I think that is the reminder of, you can always do better, potentially, is to have some good mentors in your life and have some preparation, but don't stay longer. And if you don't feel like you're valued, you should go someplace where people can see you as you see yourself. And once I decided that, I only chose to be places where people saw myself as I did. And then, of course, that allows me to be, a better version of myself every day. So that's some of the advice that 10 years ago took me a while to see.
If I could, I would just add one more thing. And I realized it in this moment that as an entrepreneur, you tend to do things in a vacuum and by yourself. And I think the advice that I might have given my younger self is allow people in and allow people to help you. And maybe share and communicate your aspirations a little bit more. Because people can't help you if they don't know what it is that you want and need. And I realize now that I'm the beneficiary of relationships where people have invested in me. And I wish I would have met them halfway a little bit more often. So that's the additional advice that I would give you.
That's great. I wish we had spoken before. I'm thinking about my bad bosses. I wish you had given me that advice 10 years ago. But so let me ask you one more question, then we're going to open it up for questions from everyone in the room. Could you tell us something that you learned from the other?
Gosh, so much. Let's see what I have learned from Warren. I have learned to say no more, so I could, give a more powerful yes when I do want to do something. He's definitely taught me that. Because I tend to want to say yes and change the world and do all that. If I do all that, then I can't say yes to the things that are really important. So he's helped me with that. I'm still a work in progress, but he's definitely helped. I've learned, quite frankly, to value introverts more. As you can see, I'm not. But he is, and I think there's so much power in introverts. And those of us who are extroverts, we need to be quiet enough to listen and learn from them, because they are, they have superpowers that I think there's a lot to learn from. So that's helped me a lot, and it's also helped me with my teams and people who are introverted to be a better leader and to lead that type of diversity, differently. And I've learned so much. I'm trying to stick it to this audience. I think that I've also learned that how the impact of how you grow up on the way that you see the world, and that there is such a benefit of being with someone in this journey called life that is a bit opposite of you. If I was married to myself, who knows what, it would not work out, we are very different, and that makes me better. And so I'm not going to say it makes me whole, because I'm the type of person who believes you should be a whole and you should marry someone whole, and then together y'all be two whole people. So I'm not into this, you complete me stuff. No, you need to be complete, but together you can be better. But I will say that I do think that, the notion of, of having compliments really, really works. That's what I would say. And the growing up part, I grew up with this mentality of like abundance, anything's possible, all of that, which is great. He did not grow up that way. And so we balance each other out, and it's very complimentary. I don't want to change that, but it probably wouldn't work if I didn't have someone who grew up a little bit differently, and we can be practical and pragmatic while I can still dream. So that's what I would say. Some of the things, there's thousands I've learned, but those are some.
Oh, wow. So I will start by saying, and it may be cliche, but apart from deciding to start my own business, there's no question in my heart and mind that the smartest decision I've made was to marry this woman. She knows this, but you all didn't, and I wanted to share that because I've learned so much, and I think probably the most important thing that I've learned is to give and not be afraid of it returning back, right? So at a very young age, along the way, I learned and decided to believe that if I didn't do something, it wasn't going to happen, right? And it didn't allow me to trust the people around me and to invite them into my world. And what's happened is that through my relationship with my wife and watching her give abundantly with no expectation of return, and I'm not just talking about money or time or love and affection, but all of those things. Whereas for me, I was operating from a place of fear. So I would hoard stuff, right? This idea that I don't know if scarcity. Yeah, that I don't know if it's going to come back to me. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. And I think the thing that I value the most is that I no longer worry about that. And I truly believe by watching an example that what you put out there in the universe comes back to you. And sure enough, each time, we volunteer time or make a contribution, I promise you it comes back. And there's this energy that flows around the universe. I won't get too deep on that, but fear, abundance, trust, these are things that I've learned from her life.
Listen, you've shared so much of yourselves. We all really appreciate it. It's so generous of you. I'm going to ask the audience if you have questions. Can we use the chat room now, Dr. Moore? Okay. So I can't see everybody if you raise your hand because there's too many people for one screen. So if you could put in the chat room, I have a question, I can be sure to call on you. But
only thing I would say is Warren and I will pretty much answer anything. So I think the power of these sacred type of spaces is you feel free to ask a raw, uncut question because we will answer.
Thank you. Okay.
Also, if people like, they can actually unmute and do a question that way instead of typing it in.
Yep.
So welcome to do that.
We have a very shy group.
It's okay.
Denora, go ahead. Come on. Yeah, I'm not shy. I just want to say God bless you both because just watching you guys, how you guys communicate with each other is actually very inspiring. I hope that I can get into a relationship like that because it's hard to find someone to be your yin to your yang. So God bless you both. I did have a few questions because I was trying to take notes, but as you can see, my children are trying to be on top of me. So Warren, you said there were 5 goals that you like to work on. You said family, friends, finances, and the last 2 were?
So fitness, right? Your well-being, and faith. And faith is, in a broad sense, is spirituality, right? It's not specific religion or doctrine, but your spiritual being in tune with your spirit and your body.
Okay. And I did have a few questions, and I hope that I don't take from anyone else. But so one of my questions were, is it Naja?
Nigel, like Joe, Nigel. Yes.
Sorry, my apologies.
Oh,
So when you are in the workforce, do you find yourself when you're in a conflict with like other peers? Sorry.
No, don't be.
Do you find that going to your husband and asking for his perspective because of his different background and how he views things, do you find like going to him first before you make a final decision helps in the workforce?
no. I'm just joking. I think it only on certain things. So I tend not to ask his opinion on the day-to-day work stuff because I think it's so different from what his day-to-day work stuff is. I tend to ask his opinion on huge things like, you know, like major decisions, you know, like the things that like moving abroad or something that has to do with the tension between me and another person or a boss. It's more on the human, just leadership management side that I just appreciate his wisdom in life, not so much like what marketing strategy I'm going to do. So I think it's actually the harder, more important things that I tend to come to him for, because I think he has a really great perspective. And even if he hasn't that experience, he knows me so well that sometimes he's just reminding me that I actually know the answer and to trust myself. So I think that on the bigger things, he's extremely helpful. On the normal day-to-day things, I don't go just because we're in a different profession, and I think he might yarn and fall asleep on me, you know, but yeah.
And I would just add that when she does call upon me, what I have learned is it's less about what I think the right answer might be and more about the questions that I'm asking, right? So if you ask the right questions, she'll come to her own conclusions without me having to say, I think you should do A, B, and C. So the skill that I've developed and continue to develop is asking the right questions, knowing her and knowing what she values and knowing what she wants, making sure that she's being true to herself. And that just involves asking questions. And sometimes I ask questions like, you drop a bomb and then I walk away. And sometimes there's an immediate response and sometimes it takes 2 months, right, for resolution. But it's more about having her just see the larger picture and come to the conclusions on her own, and vice versa.
Well, thank you. I love how you guys compliment each other's answers. My next question was, so I understand that Warren, you like more balance and you like more because of, I think it's more your perspective again. Being a mother, it's different to find balance, and I'm a mom, so I'm always trying to find like that happy medium. Do you feel like sometimes you give more to certain things? Like, like being a mom, sometimes I feel like I'm giving more being a mom than giving effort to being in school, or sometimes I'm giving more being in school than like an actual career. Do you find like how can you deal with a challenge like that?
Of always giving too much, or is it of always giving it in an imbalanced way?
I feel like it's never enough for either path you pick. You never know if you're actually giving enough or you're doing the right thing by giving too much in a certain category?
I think it's a great question, and I do think it's the harmony. I think at the end of the day, when you're giving your children too little, and when you're not giving enough at school, and when you're not giving enough at work. You feel it. You know what I mean? You just feel like it's just too little right now. I'm gonna read my kids a story to this. Another thing, you're like, I can't do that today. I got homework to do. I got to get this done. But then you make it up somewhere else. So I think it is really just listening to yourself. I never feel like I give everything enough, all the time, right? So I had a great work week, last week, but I didn't cook dinner, you know what I'm saying? So that's not I can't keep that up, and he probably wasn't the happiest with me, last week, but it was amazing at work, right? And then yesterday, I was super mom, but I was like, I had to wake up 5 o'clock this morning to get work done. So it's not like it's ever going to be perfect, but I definitely make choices, and I make them intentionally. And I think about everything especially with family, as withdrawals and deposits. And you make a lot of withdrawals from your family or your friends or your this, and you got to make sure you're making enough deposits. And when you're on E, and you need to catch up and put some more deposits in. So I just, it's a dance. I won't say I get it perfect, but I do say listen to yourself. Especially with your kids, you make sure you put those deposits in, because you never get that time back. Everything else will work out.
And do you feel like you
Well,
guys
I'm
are,
sorry.
oh, sorry, last question. Do you guys feel like you're giving almost 50-50, or because I feel like sometimes in a woman's shoes, it's a little bit harder because, we do have to do the things at home and, trying to keep the household together. And ideally the view is that the husband works and makes the money and stuff like that, and so it's a little bit more of a challenge for a woman's standpoint. Do you guys feel like you're giving 50-50 inside your household and for your workplace as well?
I'll let you answer first.
It's never been 50-50.
In most marriages, right?
Never. And if the truth is, we had 2 children. I think the first 5 years my wife worked 80 hours a week. And thank God that I enjoyed being around my children, right? Now, we had a larger village to assist us, but it's never been 50-50. And what happens is, over time, there are moments where she's contributing 100 or 1,000%, and there's moments when I'm contributing 10%. So it's really a juggling act, a balancing act. It's never going to be 50-50. We have strengths and weaknesses. And depending on their age and their needs, that might require and demand more time and attention from one of us versus the other. So I would say, be kind to yourself, be easy on yourself, and leverage your village.
Yes, and I'd say society does place pressures on women that are real, that you feel, right? So it's not like we can ignore that they're really there, these pressures that we feel. And if we don't feel them, sometimes it's our own mothers that remind us what the pressures are, even though the generation is stepping up, and men and partners and everyone, you guys are stepping up. And sometimes it's our own, our own sex that's kind of like, who holds these expectations of, that can be unrealistic. So I don't want to make it sound like this is a male-female thing. Sometimes it's just historic. But I do think that that from our 50-50 standpoint, I think going into marriage, I was told it's never going to be 50-50. So I didn't set that expectation. And I think if I had, I would have been disappointed from day one on both ways. So we never strive for it. And we just keep communication so it doesn't feel like it's 90-10 all the time on one or the other. And that's what you have to do. If you're in a relationship, you just have to acknowledge it. And I also, when I did try to be like this perfect, whatever it was, wife or this, sometimes I'm great at it and sometimes I'm not. So we talk about it often. You know what I mean? Like this week, what's it going to be? 90-10, 20 this, blah, blah. But we just keep a barometer. So my point is just keep talking, but don't try to act like it's going to be 50-50, because you'll start keeping score and it's a downhill race right there.
We have a question from M. McCord.
Hi, I just have to say, I learned so much more.
Could you speak up? We can't hear you.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. No.
Could you get closer to your mic?
Hold on a minute. Can you come back to me? I need to speak up on that. So you can do the next question. Sorry about that.
We're not hearing you. Maybe you could put your question in the chat room. While you're doing that, let's go to Mitchell Marizier.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Well, I'm 20 years old, but while you guys were talking, you guys were saying something about like before you find that right person, you have to be like whole. Like you gotta be like your own person, like 100% whole for yourself. Like, my question is, when do you know like you're fully whole, like you like completely like know yourself, and based on you guys' experience, what age was that?
Wow.
Got it. So I'm sure it's going to be very different because men and women also are very different. People are very different. So maybe you should go first. Are you going to answer?
Good.
Okay, I'm a woman, so I felt whole at like 13. So let's be clear. And any woman who's saying that she didn't is lying. You know what I mean? So I think women feel whole a lot of times, a lot younger, short of trauma in your life and other things. I don't mean it like that. And I'm not saying we're some perfect species by any means. But if you have a boy and a girl as for children, you see the development is just very different. So this is my complete and utter bias. So, but I did feel. Whole is not the word. I would never give myself credit for being whole at 13. I'm kind of joking, but I did feel like I knew what I wanted at a very young age, and I did feel confident in my ability to get it done. And if anything, I doubted that I'd ever find a partner who I felt was equal. For high school and college, I definitely felt like I was going to have to give up part of myself to find somebody who was a good partner. And much of it had to do with my socialization of what you are taught. Like, you have to kind of dumb yourself down for a guy. You have to be able to, let go of some of those dreams. You're so ambitious. You can't do it all and have kids. A lot of this has to do with socialization. So I was thinking, well, daggone, if I got to do all that and find a partner, then I'm not going to be 100% authentic. And I definitely will be diminishing my power. That's what I had led myself to believe. But when I let go of all that and said, no, I'm going to just do me. I'm going to be myself. I'm going to go for my goals and ambitions. I'm going to try to be my best self. And then, of course, I recognize that, you're in a partnership. But when I was just living and not trying to make myself something so someone could accept me, or dumb myself down so someone could take me, then I felt like, at the end of the day, the partner in my life showed up. I wasn't looking for a partner. I felt like the partner showed up. And when I met, I wasn't like, oh, hi, my name is Nigel. Let me see. I was kind of like, this is who I am. You can roll or you can't, and at the end of the day, he could roll, and we've been rolling ever since. And that's what I would say. And I had made my fair share of mistakes through high school and college, don't get me wrong, but having those bad partnerships also teaches you what you don't want. And I'm grateful for those as well. So I hope I answered your question, Michelle. That's for me. But
Yeah, I would just add that, and forgive me if I gave you the impression that I was whole at any point in time. That is the furthest thing from the truth. The reality is that I'm constantly growing, and we're all growing
Absolutely.
and changing. What you might be sensing is that I feel very comfortable in where or who I'm becoming and where I'm going. But that wasn't always the case. I got married at 25 years old. To this day, I don't know how my family allowed that to happen, because at 25 years old, I don't know what she saw in me that made her trust and believe that I could add value to a relationship. My point is that, along the way, you learn and you grow. You're going to constantly change. I think what's really important is that you have a sense of what you value and what's important to you. So for me, time and freedom and flexibility are utmost important. You cannot put a price tag on those things. And I've always been that way. And it's just over time, the importance of that and how I manage that has changed. The other thing I would say is in terms of my business, when I started my business, I was 22 years old. I remember faking it, right? Like just, the night before trying to figure it out, right? Just to get to the next deal or the next opportunity. So I didn't have things figured out. You do the best that you can with what you have in that moment, but you have to be committed to having your ears open and your eyes open and learning and growing. And each opportunity, whether it's a success or not, you have to take something from it so that you're prepared for the next opportunity. So that's what I would say.
And so I just wanted to make sure that I clarify, being whole did not mean we had it all figured out.
No.
It just meant I knew who I was and what I wanted and didn't want in life. It didn't mean I had it. So that's why I want to make sure I'm clarifying on what I mean by that. So,
well, and I would just add one more thing. As soon as you figure it out, get ready because it's going to change.
Absolutely.
Every time we've gotten comfortable and familiar,
Change.
And man, this is great. Change is literally around the corner, and it means moving from the States to Switzerland, or the States to London, or having 2 children, or changing a job. So as soon as you think you figured it out, get ready because some change is about to take place in your life.
All right, thank you guys.
Mr. McCord, did you get your mic fixed?
Is this working?
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
All right. So I just want to say I learned so much more today than I thought I would. This was great coming in today, and this was great. And my question was about life balance, and I've been working so hard to try and balance my life to make things even. But when I learned about harmony, that was something that intrigued me. I want to know more about harmony. What does that mean?
So for me, harmony simply means that you feel at peace, right? It doesn't mean everything's perfect. And I think that that what are the different roles that you want to play in your life? Like I have a mission statement. So I have a personal mission statement that I wrote, I don't know, probably in my 20s. And in the mission statement, it's a statement that says who I want to be in this world, right? I could read it every day and I'm a lot of those things, but I'm never all those things, right? And one of the things on my mission statement, or at least I'm not all of them at the same time, let me be clear. So my mission statement, it writes out the roles that I have in life. I want to be a great wife, mother, daughter, mentor, coach, friend, sister. I mean, you realize like, good God, do I have a lot of roles, right? In this life, right? And then I talk about what I want to be in this world, what I want to accomplish, how I want to show up, how I want to give back, build generational wealth. I mean, it's a beautiful statement, right? And I hope one day to be able to look at it and people who see me, on my deathbed say, oh, that was true. But, let's be clear right now, and definitely today, only part of it is. I think from a harmony standpoint, it is that I'm working towards all that all the time. And when I'm doing something in my life and I can't look at that mission statement and recognize it, I'm out of balance, right? And so you got to take the time, of course, to do something like a mission statement. That way you'll know when you're in kilter. That's what it means to me to have harmony. And most of the times I can look at it and it looks really close to my life. And sometimes it's spot on until I get out of harmony and then I'm putting it back in harmony again. I hope that helps.
Yeah, it's super interesting because I've been doing the same thing the whole time and it hasn't been working. And, maybe this is what I need. So thank you both so much.
Okay, no, thanks. And if I could be of any assistance later, they'll know where to find me. So happy to continue the conversation.
We're going past our time, and I know it's very late in Zurich right now. The sun
we're from
long down. There's a question from Ryan Marquez in the chat room about how accepting is Zurich of Americans coming to the country to work there?
Oh, that's a great question.
Question.
So you can never, as you all know, stereotype, something as broad as that. I can say that the business community, because that's typically who brings, people in, is definitely open and accepting to multinationals, anyone who's not from Switzerland, coming to work, but they are definitely about making sure that the Swiss people are taken care of. So they limit the number of visas that they have in the country for people who are not from the country to work here. And you have to, any employer that hires people here has to prove that they couldn't find anyone in the country better than that person that they're bringing in to hire. So you got to prove it. Like, you know, I needed this special skill, and so therefore I had to go outside of the country to get that person. Then you get a visa to come into Switzerland with the company, so into the company or education or whatever sector that you're in. So visas are very hard to get in Switzerland. You got to be daggone near perfect. They ask for police reports, for all your transcripts. I mean, it's an unbelievable process. But when you do get here, people are very open to you being here. One, because they know you didn't just slip into the country. But two, they realize you're here for a reason and you're contributing. The day you land, you have to have health care, private insurance. So no one kind of, you know, looks at you as, you know, like that much of a burden on the system. They expect that you're here to do something, contributing and whatnot. It's not perfect, let's be clear, but I do find that it's a little bit more open. But of course, social economics play a part in this, right? So, but I think it's pretty accepting from places. I can tell you, as an African American woman working here, you know, I often felt more accepting here than I did in my own country in the U.S. But that's another story.
Thank you for answering my question.
Are there other questions? Yes. Terry?
I think I have about two questions. My first one is that you were talking about harmony, and I was wondering, like, what do you do to achieve your harmony to feel like good at that in a moment? Is it like an action that you do? Is it that you think about it or manifest it, something like that? Or is it like you have like a extracurricular or a hobby?
Great question. You answer?
Yeah, I would just, I would say, figure out what it is that brings you joy. Like, so, and I'll use myself as an example. I enjoy exercising. I enjoy reading anything James Baldwin, like anything. Videos, movies, books, anything that has to do with James Baldwin, there's a joy that I derive from learning more about him. I enjoy laughing every day, right? And sometimes that means putting on a Netflix comedy special and listening to the same jokes that I've heard 1,000 times. But I want to laugh, and there's a joy that comes from that. And so for me, part of that harmony piece is figuring out what it is that brings you joy, and then you owe it to yourself. Like, if you don't do it for you, who's going to do it for you? So it's creating the time and the space and honoring yourself and making sure that you bring joy to yourself.
And the only thing I would add to that point is, for me, it's about managing my energy. I think it's your responsibility to manage your own energy. No one can manage your energy for you. And so you guys know there's things that deplete your energy and suck you dry. Sometimes there might be your own people you call friends. Let's be clear, it may be time to cut them off. And then you know that there's times when you get energy and people and things give you energy. And so on a day-to-day basis, you got to make sure that you're not just depleting your energy and you're not getting it back. So write a list of things that you know give you energy, and make sure when you feel too depleted, you are getting it back. You know, that's how you can manage your harmony, whatever that is for you. I might have a list of things for me, whether it's reading or writing or exercising or, you know, or laughing or, you know, giving. It doesn't matter. It's what works for you. But write down a list to make sure you know what gives you energy. And when you're dry, make sure you invest it to re-energize.
I would just add this, because I think we would be remiss. It's Black History Month, and we live outside of the U.S., and we're talking about harmony.
Yes.
We had an opportunity to return home.
A great opportunity.
And one of the things that we chose was harmony and peace and balance. And part of that meant,
and for our kids,
living abroad, because there's a certain amount of energy that's drawn or withdrawn from you. I can only speak for me, being an African-American male in the United States, right? And so when we talk about harmony,
it takes energy,
it takes energy and it takes intention. And so part of creating that harmony is also recognizing that apart from your friends, it also may be your environment that you might need to re-examine, and whether or not it's giving you life and energy or if it's taking it away from you. Living abroad has allowed me to have an additional sense of harmony and peace, not not being in a society that's consumed by race, not living in a police state. Here the minimum wage is $25 an hour.
Babysitters make $35 an hour, let's be clear.
Okay. So when you talk about, and listen, all societies in all countries,
But it costs more.
they have challenges and issues. But when the minimum wage is $25 an hour, what that says is that there's a value, there's a premium put on people having a minimum standard of living. And so that's part of harmony as well. I just wanted to add that.
And it's different for different chapters in your life. You catch us in a couple of years, it might be different. So you have to make sure you know what that looks like for different chapters in your life. I just want to acknowledge that when y'all see us living next door to you, you're like, what happened?
Yeah.
Different chapter.
Kareem, you had a second question, right?
Oh, yeah, I did. So clearly both of you are like entrepreneurs and a businessman and a woman. And I was wondering, how often did you find yourself sitting in like a room of other executives that didn't look like you and you were the only person that looked like yourself?
99.99999% of the time.
Wow. Did you have to like approach the situation a little differently than you would have, especially being in Switzerland?
I think that it's a very different nuance, and I think it's a great question. And of course, it depends on what your background is, whoever you are, by the way. For me, the people have looked differently and often potentially come from different backgrounds and thought differently. And I have tried to use that as an advantage, right? That I bring a different perspective to the situations that I'm in. This is in a situation where all things are positive. When I'm in a situation and people view the body I'm in, the sex I have, the skin color I have, the age I have as a negative, well, then those unconscious bias severely impact me, right? And so that's where it takes a different level of energy, and I have to work to account for that in my situation. So I might spend a little bit more time giving my background, or I might spend a little bit more time making sure that we get a common understanding of respect or certain different things, but all that takes energy and time. The one thing that I no longer try to work to do is ever to prove that I should be in a room. Because when you guys are proving something, you're already behind, right? You're already spending energy negatively. You shouldn't have to prove you're anywhere. You can account for something. Like I can account for being a woman, and I can make sure you clearly know what that means. I'm not going to have to prove that I'm there for something else, because then I've already given you the power. So that's a different, probably different conversation for a different time. But I would say that I try to work to account for those differences and not necessarily spend time trying to prove it. That's what I do in the situations. I give you specific examples, might be more relevant, but that's what I'd say overall. And you?
Well, I think, if I'm honest with myself, I'm often the only person of color in my work settings. And I think, unlike my wife, I'm constantly mindful of demonstrating my value and worth. But how you do it and how I do it now is very different. This idea that I might give more than the idea that I might share with you my experience and my insights and my research. Hopefully that not only empowers you, but maybe it disarms you. It allows you to have some faith and trust in what I might be able to bring to the table. I think the older I get, the less important it is for me to have to do that. But I think I would be, naive if that wasn't at least the first 30 years of my life, always having to validate and prove myself in those rooms. So I think sometimes, at least for me, I don't think that ever goes away. I think how you manage it and how much it means to you. So, right. So sometimes what you think doesn't matter, right? And it's less about what you think, and it's more about you know, maybe I'm going in a different direction.
No, I think it's true. If you're the only one in the room and people are judging you, you have to decide whether you care how they're judging you or not. I think that's the point.
But I also think it's important. I'm assuming, right? We're all trying to get somewhere, and I think the joy that maybe what you might be hearing from us is that we're in a place now where we're here, and you know,
take us or leave us. That's what I would say.
There's things that I wouldn't say, right? But the truth is, I don't care what you think about me anymore, right? Yes. Because we're in this room together, and we didn't arrive here by accident. And I have tangible skills and proven track record.
Exactly.
And so if that's not what you're looking for, that's okay. There's others who are.
And that's part of being peace at who you are. Dr. Bell, if I may just add just one point, because I think it's important, because we are international and we are global in our perspective. And I think one of the things that's afforded us is different perspectives that I want to share with you, so you don't have to feel like you travel all over the world to get it. You know, this is the whole point of having people talk to each other, is to save you guys some time, and you guys get where we are way faster than we ever could. You know, but the one thing I'd say is you have to know the different settings and the impact on you, whoever you are, right? So being in Europe, as an example, being a woman is a very different connotation than being, you know, in the US. You know, being an African American is very different depending on what country you're in. In the US, as an African American, people are always ask you like, oh, wow, it's so good to see you here. How did you get here? Like, how did you get in the room? You're always like, what the hell are you asking? But they're really asking, you know, like, I'm in this room, you're in this room, how'd you get here? And it's not just a Black thing. It could be wherever you are. If you're young, if you're different income bracket, it could, if you're a single parent, it doesn't matter. People always somehow are always asking you how you got here, right? It's something about the American culture that does that. When you're in London, which is a very classist society, if you're in the room, people assume you should be there, no matter who you are, right? That's not good. That's not bad, because you also can turn into a classist. But it's better for some people because people just assume you should be there, right? You're in somewhere like Switzerland, where most people, you know, are Swiss, and you're coming into. They're just trying to figure out, how'd you get here? You know what I mean? And why are you here? So it does vary on where you are. And so I just say, keep that in mind, the places that you go, that there's a different impact. And sometimes it's easier on you and sometimes it's harder. And it's the same thing wherever you are in the different settings that you're, you know, that you're in as well. Just take note of it.
Yeah. Context.
Thank you both. I don't see any more questions in the chat room. So I'm going to quote Reggie Pierre Charles, who wrote, "Thank you both for sharing your amazing union with us and bringing such positivity." I really want to ask the audience to unmute for a second and applaud for Nigel.
I don't need to do that. Thank you all. Thank you. No, you are the ones who deserve the credit. You can do anything for your free time, and you chose to listen to some other people share, hopefully, some insight. And so I give you guys all the credit in the world. As busy and as many things as you could be doing, you chose to do something that hopefully can invest in your life, and that is to be applauded. So I thank you guys as well.
Well, that's very kind, but we thank you. And it's really been a great hour and 50 minutes, really well spent. And thanks for sharing personal things too with a bunch of relative strangers. But I don't feel like we're strangers now.
No, we're not.
Thanks so much. I hope you come back to Mass Bay at some future date. You're always welcome.
We definitely will. Thank you for your time and your wisdom, and for Dr. Moore. Thank you for being one of the world's best mentors to both Warren and I.
Yes,
we're extremely grateful for all you do for us and for others as well. So thank you.
That's great. Okay. And finally, thank you, Henry, for handling the technology.
Of course. Thank you, Henry, and thank you, Charles, wherever you are.
Charles, thank you for doing Wawa. Thank you for doing the introduction.
Exactly. Thank you, Dr. Right. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Have a great evening.
All right. Bye-bye.
Everyone stay safe.
Cheers.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.